Welcome back to my channel. I'm Lizette and I'm going to show you how to make Blanky from the Brave Little Toaster. Alright, first let's go over supplies you'll need. Obviously yarn, everything is size 4. Yellow for the body, beige for his head, brown for his nose, and black for the embroidery. Crochet hooks, you will need 2. The 5mm is for the yellow blanket body part. I use a 3.25 for the entire head, so the nose and the head. This is up to how tight you crochet amigurumi, just as long as it's tight enough that we are not seeing the polyfill coming out. A yarn needle. Stitch markers, I have 4 because I use them for each corner of the face when we're doing this cube shape. Polyfil, scissors, and then my last optional tool is pliers. I used this when I was embroidering the face and needed to bring the needle from like here to down here, so to help kind of pull it through, because this is made tightly, it just, for me, it's easier on my hands. I will put a list of the stitches that we use right here on the screen. If any of them you have not done before, I suggest looking them up on YouTube and finding a tutorial for the actual stitches. I will not be teaching that on this video. I do have a video for the magic ring and for crocheting in the back loop only, and that will be linked in the description below. Just a couple of notes. The head and the nose are done in what's called continuous rounds, which means at the end of each row you're not going to chain one and then continue, you're just going to keep going, and that's why the stitch marker is important for the head. For the body, we are working in rows, not rounds, and you will be doing a chain 2 at the beginning of each row for the body. The finished size for Blanky is going to be about 13.5 inches both ways, and that depends on how closely you met the gauge for this pattern. If you go with a different hook, different yarn, that's fine. Just know that it will turn out a different size. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, we're going to check the gauge for those of you who want the Lovey to come out around the size that I mentioned. So with the 5mm hook and the yarn that you're going to use for the body blanket part, you're going to chain 18. Then we're going to start with double crochets, and we're going to do 16 of them. So we're going to skip the first 2 chains from the hook. 1, 2 chain, and here is the third one. We're going to go into that, and we're going to do 16 double crochets, which is 1 in each chain, all the way down to the end. Okay, so there's our first row, 16 double crochets. We're going to chain 2 at the beginning of each row, turn your work, and 16 double crochets again, and you're going to repeat this for 8 more rows. Alright, so we've got 8 rows with 16 double crochets in each row. Then we're going to take our tape measure and make sure that within 4 inches there are 16 double crochets, and the other way we want to make sure that 4 inches hits 7 rows. So you're going to lay your tape measure down. So I'm starting right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So there's my 14 double crochets in 4 inches. So make your adjustments if you need to with your hook size. If you had too many in here, you need to go up a hook size so that your stitches are bigger, and then there'll be less there. If you had not enough, then you need to go smaller in hook size, and that's how gauge works. There is going to be a link in the bio if that was confusing or too quick for you to fully grasp, because it took me a while to understand it. but my friend Rachel has a really good blog post, and I'll link that below, so it'll go into real detail on how that works. And then for the height, we're going to make sure we have 7 rows. All right, we're going to lay that flat and make sure we have 7 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 ends right here, and there's my 4 inches. All right, so we're going to make the blanket. First, we want to do a slip knot, and normally we keep the tail pretty short and sort of do our slip knot because you don't normally need much of a tail. But for this doll, the way I did it, all right, so if we look at this upside down, this is the middle where the blanket starts, and I purposely left a really long tail to stick out here so that when I was done and I was ready to sew his head on, okay, this is the center of the blanket, and I used the yellow yarn from that and went into his head to attach that. So instead of this little short tail, we're going to start with a very long tail, however much you think you'll need to get that head on there really secure. So I'm just going to pull a bunch out and then start my slip knot. Okay, then we're going to chain 6. And we're going to form a ring with this by going into the first chain with a slip stitch. Okay, and now we have a ring, and then here's that beginning tail end that we're just going to leave to the side. Okay, so for row 1, we're going to chain 3, and then we're going to work everything into the ring for this row. So this chain 3 is going to count as a double crochet, so we're going to do 2 more double crochets inside the ring. So now technically you have the chain 3 that counts as 1, 2, and 3. All right, next you're going to chain 2. Then we're going to do 3 double crochets into the ring. And again, this whole time I am not crocheting over that tail end, so I'm pulling that to the side, okay, out of my way. And then keep going with your 3 double crochets. And we're going to do that part 2 more times. So again, chain 2, 3 double crochets, and then again chain 2, 3 double crochets. Okay, you can see the square is forming. So we've got 4 groups with 3 double crochets. So you got 1 corner, 2nd corner, 3rd corner, and now we're about to do the last one. We're going to chain 2. All right, then you're going to slip stitch this shut by going into the chain 3. So here's the 1st chain, 2nd chain, 3rd chain. You want to make sure you're going into that and not into that first double crochet V at the top. Okay, so we're going to slip stitch that shut. And then that's it for row 1. For row 2, we're going to chain 3. That counts as a double crochet. Then we're going to double crochet in the next 2 stitches, which will bring us right to that chain 2 space, that hole there. Okay, so 2 double crochets. Now we're at the chain 2 space, and inside this space you're going to do all of the next group of stitches, which is 2 double crochets, chain 2, and then 2 double crochets again, all inside here. Okay, so first 2 double crochets in here in the chain 2 space, and then chain 2, and then again in the chain 2 space, 2 double crochets. And as you can see, we formed the next corner. So here's the first one and the next one. Okay, we're going to continue down the row, and this time we're going to double crochet again all the way till we get to the next chain 2 space, and this time there's 1, 2, 3 stitches. So you can see the 3 double crochets right here, 1, 2, 3. So that means we have 3 spaces to double crochet into. Now this first one is easy to sort of get buried by the ones we just did, like that. So just make sure you're not skipping that first one there. Okay, and now we're up to that next chain 2 space. And we're going to do the same thing we did in that first corner. Okay, so again, 2 double crochets. Chain 2. 2 more double crochets into the chain 2 space. And now you have corner number 2 made for row 2. And again, for this side, we're going to double crochet across until we get to the next chain 2 space. And again, that's 1, 2, 3 double crochets. Don't forget the first one that can get covered up easily. Okay, we're at our next chain 2 space, and just like the other ones, 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets again, and now you've completed the third corner of the square. Okay, and then again those 3 double crochets to complete this third time that we're repeating that same pattern. Okay, so starting from this corner, we did the corner, 3 double crochets, another corner, 3 double crochets, third corner, 3 double crochets. And then for the last corner, we're going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, so that's not different than the other corners. And then we're just going to join with a slip stitch in the third chain of the beginning chain 3. So 1, 2, and 3. Slip stitch that together, and row 2 is done. You should have 28 double crochets and 4 corners as usual. Now row 3 is going to be the pattern you're going to follow over and over and over, all the way to row 11 of the blanket. So if anything, I will mark where this row starts on the video in the description, so you can click right to it if you need to watch it through again. But after row 3, I'm going to put the written instructions up, and you can just check it to make sure your numbers are adding up right. But it's going to be the same pattern over and over. So here we go with row 3. You're going to start with the chain 3 as all of them. And that chain 3 always counts as a double crochet. Then you're going to double crochet in each stitch till you get to that chain 2 space. So if you look here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 double crochets. So for this first side here, we're going to do 4 double crochets. And then obviously for the other rows, this number 4 is going to be bigger and bigger as you go. And again, don't forget that this chain 3 counted. So here is technically the first double crochet that goes with this chain 3 here. So then there's just 4 more, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we did 4 more here. We are at the chain 2 space again. Now the corners for the entire pattern are always going to be the same, with 2 double crochets, chain 2, and then 2 double crochets again. So that's what you will do in every chain 2 space. Then again, when you get to the next side, count how many doubles are there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to do 7 double crochets, making sure not to skip that first one that's right there. Okay, and again that number 7 will get bigger and bigger each row that you do. So now we are at the next chain 2 space. So we're going to do 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet again. There is our second corner. All right, we're on the third side, same thing again with the 7 double crochets all the way till we get to the next chain 2 space. Okay, next chain 2 space, 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet again. There is our third corner, fourth side, again double crochets until you get to the next chain 2 space. All right, don't be like me and be careful. I had to go back and redo this corner down here because when I was doing the 7 double crochets that I needed here, I was only able to fit in 6. So I knew something was wrong. If your numbers don't, if it's short on this side and you already did 7 and 7, then something you might have missed on the previous row. So I looked back and it turns out that right here I had only done 2 double crochets, the chain 2, and then 1 double crochet here. I forgot that second one, probably just from me rushing and going fast. So just backtrack if you ever notice the counts are off. All right, so now again in that last corner, same thing as usual, 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet. And then you'll see that starting from row 3 and on, there's gonna be some extra stitches before you get to that beginning chain 3. And just like everywhere else, you need to double crochet into all the stitches before you get back to the beginning. So instead of just going right for the slip stitch in the chain 3, we first need to double crochet into, because there's 2 doubles right here. Now there's 2 here, obviously in the next row there's going to be more than 2. Just make sure you don't count this slip stitch as one of the stitches, and you can always tell the difference because it has the chain 3 coming out of it, and then these 2 are just regular double crochets at the top. So double crochet into those 2. Now we're back to the beginning with just the slip stitch and the chain 3 showing. So slip stitch into that chain 3. And that's it for chain 3, and that's the pattern you're going to keep following. So if we're going to start with 4, we're going to chain 3, and then we're going to double crochet in however many there are here until we get to the next chain 2 space. And I will leave all of those stitch counts and basically the full written instructions. I'll pop it on the screen, and I'll also stick it in the description below. And come back to the video once you have 11 rows done, just like you did row 3. All right, here it is after row 11, and let's pretend I weaved in the end. And then if you flip it over, this is the wrong side, and you can see that beginning tail is still there for when we get to the end and we sew the head on. For the arms, we're still using the 5mm hook and the yellow yarn, and obviously we will make 2 of them. So start with a magic ring, link in the description if you don't know how to do that. And we're going to chain 2. So here's the ring and the chain 2. Do 6 double crochets into the ring. And pull that tail end as tight as you can to close up the hole. For row 2, we're going to slip stitch to the first stitch. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go into that which is the first double crochet you made Now when I do my first slip stitch for row 2, this is only a row 2 thing, I like to carry the tail end with me so that this is not going to come loose. So I always grab the two together and do my slip stitch with both of them, so you can see the two strands on my hook, and then I just let it go. So now we pulled that center tight and we pulled it through on the slip stitch to join the round together, and that's just a way to make it extra secure. I always do this with my magic rings. I know a lot of people have trouble with them coming loose, and I've never had that problem when I do it like that. Okay, so for row 2 we did the slip stitch, and then we're gonna chain 2. We're gonna do 2 double crochets, 1 in the next stitch, 1 in the stitch after that. So they're 2 separate double crochets, and then an increase, which means we're going to do 2 of them together in the next stitch, and the next one in the same spot, and there is our increase. And do it one more time. So 1 double crochet, the second one in the next stitch, and an increase at the end. Okay, so row 2 is done, and you can see this should be starting to curve down like a little mini hat. Okay, for round 3, again we're gonna slip stitch into the first stitch. So look for that first V stitch, pull through, and chain 2. And now we're just going to do 1 double crochet in each stitch, so that's 8 altogether. Okay, row 3 is done. You can see a little hand is forming. Row 4, we're going to slip stitch to the top of the first stitch and chain 2. Now we're going to do 3 double crochets and then 1 increase. So 1, 3 separate ones, and then in the next one increase, so do 2 double crochets in the next one. And repeat that one more time. 3 double crochets and 1 increase. Okay, and last row for the arms, you're going to slip stitch again into the first stitch, then chain 2. Now you're going to do 4 double crochets and then an increase, and do that 2 times. Okay, that's 4 double crochets, and now an increase, so 2 in the next stitch, and repeat that one more time. Alright, and then to finish the arm, do a slip stitch into the first stitch to join it together, and then you want to fasten off with a long enough tail to sew this onto the body. So give, a decent length. I'm going to do about that much. Better to have too much. Okay, and now I have one arm done, and go ahead and rewind if you need to and make a second one. And now we have 2. Okay, next we're going to sew the arms onto the blanket. This is where all the rows were being joined, so this is where each row started. I did say to weave in the end, but I left it here just so you can see that is the back of the blanket. So his head will go here in the middle, and his arms are going to go on this side. Okay, so once you get that set the way it should be, and make sure you're looking at the front and not the back. As you were making each corner, it did make a hole here, so we are going to use that as a guide to know where to put the arms. Okay, so here's an arm, and you want to count to where the 8th and 9th hole is, starting from down here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Here is the 8th and 9th hole starting from the corner, and we're going to attach the arm so that it covers both of those holes. So we're going to be sewing through both stitches, both sides of the arm, because we want them to be flat like this, and then we're going to attach it on, not into where the holes are, but kind of right above it like that. So again, count from the corner to the 8th and 9th one. First, let's thread our needle onto the yarn. Okay, and then again, line up where we want this to be. So I'm going to cover the 8th and 9th. So I folded the arm flat, and you want the tail to be at the end here, okay, because we're going to sew through. If you look at the rows here, we want to go through the front loop of this side and the front loop of that side, like this. That's how we're going to sew through the arm, okay? So again, we'll go to the next one, just the outer loop, and then the one right across from it, the outer loop only. It's just going to make a cleaner join on the blanket and make it look more like it's part of his body than you being able to see all these V's if you do it differently. All right, so knowing that, again, line it up over the 8th and 9th hole. And I'm going to start right where this is attached and go right through the blanket right there and all the way through to the other side. So we're sort of right above where those two openings are, those two holes. And then we're going to pull that through. Okay, so here's those two that I'm going to cover. And when I come back up, okay, again, keeping this kind of right above those two holes, I'm going to come up, and then I'm going to go through this back outer loop here, and then the one across from it, the outer loop there. Pull that through, and then you want to kind of go right back in where you were. That's actually called the seamless join technique, and it makes it, like I said, blend in more with the piece that it's attached to. Okay, so again, now we're going to go to the next 2 stitches on the arm. So we have a V here and a V there, and I'm going to come up through the outer loops of both of those and try to go through the thread and not a big open hole. Okay, so here's the outer loop and then the other outer loop. Okay, pull that all the way through and go right back down where you came in from. There is a video showing this in slower, more detail that I'll link in the description if you've never done the seamless join, but that's what we're doing here. Okay, so again, looking at the next 2 stitches on the arm, keeping that lined up with the openings on the blanket. We're gonna come up, go right through here, go through the outer loop, first one, and the outer loop of the next one, and right back in where you came out from. And keep doing that all the way down to the end of the arm. All right, and as you can see, the arm is attached right there above the holes. And on the other side, just tie a bunch of really good knots so that this doesn't come through, and then weave in the end and repeat the same thing on the opposite side for the other arm. Okay, so that arm's there, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So the other arm will be attached right here. So repeat what we just did over there, and then we'll move on to the next step. There it is, both arms sewn on. Now we'll start the head, and you're gonna need a 3.25 millimeter hook, or whatever hook size you're used to using when you make amigurumi, so anything that needs to be tight and not showing the polyfill through. It's okay if it's a different size for you because your yarn could be thicker or thinner and you might crochet tighter or looser than me, but as long as it's tight enough that we don't see through it, then you're good. So for me, a 3.25 millimeter, and we're going to use a beige colored yarn, and you will need stitch markers for this section. All right, first thing you're going to do is chain 7, starting in the second chain from your hook. So first chain, second chain, you're going to do 5 single crochets, so that's going to leave you with 1 at the end that is not worked yet. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And there's still this last one right here. This is the slip knot. Okay, so 5 single crochet. Now all in this last chain, we're going to do 2 single crochets, a chain 1, 2 single crochets again, another chain 1, and then 2 single crochets. All of that is going in this last stitch. When you do the chain 1s for this entire section for the head, you want to make them loose enough because you're going to be doing all the corners, all right, all the corner areas that get increases are going to need to go into those chain 1s. So you don't want to make them as tight as you normally do because then it'll be hard to get your hook in there. Okay, so here we go with this last stitch again. So first do 2 single crochets all in the same stitch. Okay, then my chain 1, keep that loose, 2 more single crochets all in the same stitch still, chain 1 again, keep it loose, and then 2 single crochets. Okay, so you can see it made like a rectangle shape. Okay, so now we are actually on the other side of those chain stitches from the beginning, and we're going to work into those as we continue this round. So we're going to do 5 single crochets. You can see there's a loop right here. That's that first chain. You can just keep this either tucked away because it'll end up inside of the head, or you can crochet over it as you go. Either way is fine. I'm going to just move it out of the way. So that was 1 single crochet. Here's the next chain, 2, next one, 3, 4, and 5. Now there's still 1 more chain left right here, this one, and then here is the V from the first stitch. Okay, we're going to do those same increases into this last chain. So starting with 2 single crochets, all of this is going to go right into this chain stitch. Okay, so 2 single crochet, do that chain 1, keep it loose, 2 more single crochet, chain 1, keep it loose, and 2 more single crochet. Okay, and then that created this little rectangle shape. You should have 22 stitches. Go ahead and count if you need to double check, and we are going to slip stitch into this first stitch from that row. If you're worried about this hole that is created doing all those increases, you can use either the tail end to kind of sew through the back and sew that closed. The other thing to keep in mind is it's not really an issue because when we make Blanky's nose, it ends up covering most of that. So you really don't see it anyway. I like to add stitch markers in every single chain 1 space because that way I sort of know if I'm off track, and then I can catch a problem before I end up finishing a whole round. Okay, so round 2, we're going to chain 1, and you're going to half double crochet into the same space that you did that slip stitch. Then you're going to do 6 more half double crochets and that should bring you to that chain 1 space that I have marked. Okay, there's my 6 half double crochets, and now we're at the stitch marker, which is that chain 1 space. So I'm going to remove that. Okay, and all in that chain 1 space, we're going to do 2 single crochets, a chain 1, and then another 2 single crochets. Okay, there's my 2 single crochet, my chain 1, keep it loose, and 2 more single crochets. And now you just made the first corner of round 2, and we're going to pop that stitch marker back into the chain 1. Next, we're going to do 2 single crochets until we get to the next chain 1 space. Make sure you don't miss that first one. All of these stitches might sort of kind of get pushed over and cover that a little bit, so just make sure you're getting into that first single crochet space there, and there's the second one, and now we're back at the corner number 2, chain 1 space. We're going to take the stitch marker out and do the same as we did on that first corner, which is all inside this chain 1 space, 2 single crochets, a chain 1, and then 2 single crochets again. Okay, so right into there. Chain 1, keep it loose, and 2 more single crochet. Okay, corner number 2 is done, and put that stitch marker back into the chain 1 space. Okay, corner 2 is done, and now we're going to do 9 half double crochets until we get to the next corner. And again, make sure you don't miss that first one there. Okay, 9 half double crochets are done, and we are up to the next corner, so we'll remove that stitch marker. Okay, for corner number 3, just like the other 2, you're going to do 2 single crochets, a chain 1, and 2 single crochets, all in the same space, and making sure that you keep that chain 1 loose. Okay, the third corner is done, and we're going to put the stitch marker back into that chain 1 space. Okay, there should be 2 single crochets until we get to the next stitch marker. Alright, we're at the 4th corner, remove that stitch marker, and again, 2 single crochets, a chain 1, 2 single crochets, all in that chain 1 space. Okay, corner number 4 is done. Pop that stitch marker back in to the new chain 1. There are 2 stitches left here in the row. Right here and here, we're going to half double crochet, not single crochet, into those so they can match the height of the ones we did at the beginning of the row. 1 half double crochet in the last 2 stitches, and you need to make sure that you are skipping this slip stitch and the chain 1. Okay, and that's what we did before we started this row. So again, we went into this stitch for the half double crochet. This is a slip stitch, this is a chain 1. So we are going to slip stitch into the top of the first stitch of the row, which is the next V after that. And that's the end of round 2. For round 3, we're going to start with a chain 2. Then we're going to double crochet in the next 6 stitches. Okay, you should have 2 stitches left before you get to the first corner, and in those 2 stitches we're going to do 1 half double crochet. Okay, so now we're at corner number 1 and we're going to remove that stitch mark. Okay, for corner number 1 we're going to do unlike the other row, the other round, we're going to do 1 single crochet, a chain 1, and then 1 single crochet. Okay, corner number 1 is done, and pop the stitch marker back into the chain 1. Then we're going to do 6 single crochets until we get to the next corner. Okay, now we're at the next corner. Remove the stitch marker. We're going to do 1 single crochet, a chain 1, and another single crochet, all in this chain 1 space. Okay, that corner is done, and put the stitch marker back. Next, we're going to do a half double crochet in the first 2 stitches. Then 11 double crochets until you get to the next corner. Okay, 11 double crochets. Remove the stitch marker in the next chain 1. Then all in the same stitch, we're going to do 2 single crochets, a chain 1, and 2 single crochets all together in the chain 1 space. Okay, 2 single crochets, chain 1, and 2 single crochets again. Okay, corner number 3 is done. Put the stitch marker back into the chain 1. Next, we're going to do 6 single crochets until we get to the next corner. Okay, 6 single crochets are done, and remove the stitch marker in the 4th corner. For corner number 4, we're going to do just like this one, 2 single crochets, a chain 1, and 2 single crochets again, all into this chain 1 space, and always keeping that chain 1 loose. Okay, corner number 4 is done, and pop that stitch marker back into the chain 1. Okay, then we're going to double crochet in the last 4 stitches that are left, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, this is that slip stitch and then the chain 2. Okay, so just the 4 stitches, double crochet into those. Okay, and then we're going to slip stitch into the top of the first stitch. So there's that slip stitch from the beginning, chain 1, chain 2, we're going to slip stitch right into that. And that is it for round 3. For round 4, we're going to chain 2 and double crochet in the same stitch. Next, we're going to do 7 double crochets. Okay, and then 1 half double crochet in that next stitch. And now you are at corner number 1. So remove the stitch marker. All in the chain 1 stitch, we're going to do 1 single, a chain 1, and another single. Corner number 1 is done. Put the stitch marker back into the new chain 1. Do 8 single crochet until we get to the next corner. Okay, the 8 single crochet are done. We're at the next stitch marker, remove that. Just like corner number 1, all in the chain 1 space, we're going to do 1 single crochet, then a loose chain 1, and another single crochet. Corner number 2 is done. Stitch marker back into the chain 1. All right, we're going to first do 1 half double crochet in the first stitch, and then 15 double crochets until we get to the next corner. Okay, there's our 15 double crochet, and now we are up to the next stitch marker. For the third corner, we're going to do 1 single crochet, chain 1, and then 1 single crochet. Stitch marker back into the chain 1. Next, we're going to do 10 single crochets until we get to the next corner. Okay, there's our 10. Remove the stitch marker, do a single crochet, chain 1, and another single crochet, all in the chain 1 space. Okay, the fourth corner is done, and put that stitch marker back into the chain 1. And we're going to double crochet in the last 6 stitches left here in the row. Then we're going to slip stitch to the top of the first stitch. So again, this is the slip stitch from the beginning of the row, and then the chain 2, chain 1, chain 2, and then go into the V at the top. And that is it for round 4. All right, for round 5, we're going to start with the chain 1. Then you're going to single crochet in the same space that we have the chain 1. So that's right in there. And I'm going to mark that with the stitch marker so I know where this round is starting. And then for the rest of this round, we're actually going to crochet in the back loop only, and that is including these chain 1 spaces. So actually for this round, we don't need these stitch markers anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and remove those. Okay, so if you've never crocheted in the back loop only, all that means is instead of how we normally go like this, which is under 2 loops of the stitch, okay, we're only gonna go into the 1 loop, which is the back one. Okay, because some patterns will instruct you to use the front loop, which would be here, but this row we're doing the back loop, so the one that is away from you. And we're going to do every single stitch for this row like that. So single crochet all the way around in the back loop only. And you can see after you do a couple of them, it starts to create a little ridge. So that little line there. Let me do a couple more. Okay, so what it does is it makes like a fold, and it'll end up curving away from you. Okay, so just go all the way around until you get to the end. Okay, when you get to the end, you're gonna need to skip this slip stitch here and this chain 1. And that's why I marked the first single crochet there, so you can see exactly where you're going to do your slip stitch at the end to join the row. Okay, so we're going to remove the stitch marker and slip stitch right into that stitch. All right, and you should have 61 stitches for round 5. And if you look at it from the side, you can see where that back loop only starts creating like a box shape. Round 6, you're going to chain 1, and then you're going to start in the same stitch as the chain 1, and you're going to do 61 single crochets. And for this row, we are back to normal with going through both loops of the stitches, so no more of the back loop only. And use your stitch marker to mark where you started and go all the way around until you have 61 all the way to the end. Okay, here's the end of round 6, and just like before, you're going to skip the slip stitch and the chain 1 and slip stitch into where we have our stitch marker. And that's it for round 6. Now for rounds 7 through 10, they're going to be done in what's called continuous rounds, and that means we're not going to be doing, you know, a chain 1 at the beginning anymore. We're just going to keep going, almost like this is just one row that goes on forever, and that's why you have to use your stitch marker so you know when the row ends and where it begins. So round 7, just go right into the next available stitch, and that's your first one. Pop that stitch marker in there, and when you get to the end, when you go back into where the stitch marker is in, that would be round 8, and keep going until you have up to round 10, going through both loops like normal, and then we'll pick up from there. It should look like this after round 10. Here's where we started, and then the side. Round 11 is going to be in the back loop only again, just like we did for round 5. So we're going to do that again for round 11. You're going to start off by doing 10 single crochets. Okay, there's our 10, and you can see the little edge showing there. Then do 1 decrease. Again, this is still all in the back loop only. So we're going to go into the back loop of the next stitch, pull up a loop, and instead of completing that like a normal single crochet, you're going to go into the next one too, pull up a loop, and you should have 3 on your hook. Pull through all 3, and now you did a decrease. Next, we're going to do 9 single crochets, again continuing this entire row in the back loop. Then do another decrease, then 17 single crochets. Okay, after the 17 single crochets, we're going to do another decrease, then we're going to do 10 single crochet, okay, there's our 10, another decrease, and then single crochet in the last 7 stitches of the row. And you should have 57 stitches for round 11. We are still doing continuous rounds here, so we're not going to chain at the beginning of this row. So we're just going to continue on, and this time not in the back loop, only for that row we just did. Now we're going back to crocheting normally into both loops. So we're going to start off by doing 8 single crochets, and don't forget to put your stitch marker back in. Okay, there's our 8. Then we're going to decrease 3 times in a row, and now that we're back into both loops like normal, we're going to do the invisible decrease this time. And if you haven't done that, the way that works is you only go through the front loop of the 2. So here's 1 decrease. You go through the front loop of that one, then right away the front loop of the other. Okay, so you have those 2 loops on your hook. Then yarn over, pull through just those 2, and then yarn over, pull through both. And it's just less of an obvious decrease when you do it that way. It's a smoother looking decrease. Okay, so that was 1. We're going to do 2 more. Okay, so again, in the front loop of 1, front loop of the next one, yarn over, pull through those 2, yarn over, pull through those 2. Okay, so that was 2 decreases. And now the third one, front loop of the next 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. Next we're going to do 5 regular single crochets. Then we're going to do 2 decreases, and then 12 single crochet. Okay, then we're going to do 3 decreases again. Okay, there's the 3 decreases, and then 7 single crochet. Make sure after your decreases you're not accidentally going into, you know, that one loop in the front there. This is all part of the decrease, and you can tell when you move it what's part of the decrease and what's the next stitch. You can see that there's a full V right here, but it's easy to accidentally, you know, stick your hook in there. So see, if you end up with a different stitch count, that's probably what you did. All right, so go ahead and do the 7. And then 3 decreases. And then you should have 3 stitches left. So 1, 2, 3 for the row, and do single crochet in each of those. And that's it for round 12. Here it is from the top and from the side. Okay, we're going to continue to decrease in round 13. So first we're going to start off with 7 single crochets. Okay, and then we're going to do 3 decreases. All right, next we're going to do 2 single crochets, and then 2 decreases, and then 10 single crochet, and then 3 decreases, then 3 single crochet, and then 3 decreases again, and then you should have 2 stitches left, and you're going to single crochet in each of those. And then you should have 35 stitches for row 13. For round 14, we're going to start with 4 single crochet. Then we're going to do 3 decreases. Then 1 single crochet. And then 2 decreases. Then 6 single crochet. 3 more decreases, okay, next let's do 1 single crochet, then 3 decreases, and then single crochet in the last stitch. And that leaves you with 24 stitches for round 14. Now at this point, we want to start to fill it with polyfill before the opening gets too small, because as you can see already, it has closed up quite a bit at this point. Kind of looks like a little mini tissue box. So we're going to grab some polyfill, and don't overstuff it. You don't want it, you know, where it's like making it more round than we want it to be. Alright, so now I filled it with polyfill, and then if we need to at the end, if it feels like it needs some more before we close it up for good, we can squeeze some more in there. For round 15, we're going to do 12 decreases. I like to hold my finger inside to kind of keep the polyfill out of my way, but whatever you're comfortable doing. Okay, that is 12 stitches now for round 15. For round 16, we're going to do 1 single crochet and 1 decrease, and we're going to repeat that 4 times. So repeating that same pattern, 1 single crochet, then 1 decrease, and do that 4 more times, leaving you with 8 stitches for round 16. Okay, for the last round 17 of the head, we're going to do 4 decreases, leaving us with 4 stitches, which we will sew closed, and I'll show you that when we get there. Okay, you can see it's completely closed, back of the head, front of the head. Then we're going to fasten off with a tail long enough to close that hole and weave it inside the head. Okay, get your needle, and what you're going to do is you're going to go through the front loop of each stitch. So there's 4 stitches, so just 4 loops that you're going to go through, just the front one. There is a video linked in the description that really goes through this process a little slower if you've never done it before. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Alright, then pull that shut, and don't worry that this is sticking up. What you're going to do is go right into the middle and just sew all the way through it. Just go all the way straight across into the other side, and then pull that tight, and you can see that flattens out. And then go back into the head a couple more times in different directions just to secure that end in there. Alright, and then we're going to cut that excess and then squeeze it so that goes back inside. Alright, so the head is done. For the nose, we're going to stay with the 3.25 millimeter hook and a brown yarn. Start off with a magic ring. Alright, and we're going to do 6 single crochets into the ring. Okay, and then pull that tight to close up the hole, and round 1 is done. For round 2, we're going to increase in each stitch, so 2 single crochets into all 6 stitches. Okay, that's 12 stitches for round 2. For round 3, we're going to do a single crochet and then an increase, which is 2 single crochet in the same stitch. And you're going to repeat that pattern for the entire round. 1 single crochet, 1 increase 6 times, and that'll bring you to 18 stitches for round 3. For round 4, you're going to do an increase and then 2 single crochets and repeat that pattern all the way around. So there is my increase in 1 stitch and then single crochet in the next 2 stitches, and repeat that until you get to the end with 24 stitches. And there is the end of round 4 with 24 stitches. For round 5, we're going to start with a slip stitch into the next stitch. Then we're going to chain 1. And then in the back loop only, we're going to single crochet in each stitch around. So you should have 24 single crochets all in the back loop only for round 5. Okay, and then here is the end of round 5. Okay, for round 6 we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch. You can skip this next one, is actually the chain 1, so go right into the next stitch and slip stitch that together, and then chain 1. And again we're going to do 24 single crochets, but this time we're back into both loops, so no more of the back loop. Okay, here is the end of round 6. Next you're going to slip stitch to the next stitch, and again skip that chain 1, which is actually the very next thing you'll see there. So go into that next stitch with a slip stitch, and then you're going to fasten off with a tail end that is long enough to sew this nose onto the head. So we want to be able to go around this and into every single stitch to sew this onto the nose. Onto the head. Okay, and that's how long of a piece I cut. All right, when we sew the nose on, we want to line it up so that it's about 4 rows down from the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, and then about 3 from the bottom. Here's 1, 2, 3. It's a little higher. That's why I say about. It just depends on your tension and how tight you make your piece. The main purpose is just basically cover those holes. And then as far as the sides, about 1 to 1.5 rows in. So here's 1 row, and then about halfway into the second row, kind of puts it dead center that way. Okay, you can use pins to hold it down, so I'm going to go put some of those in. All right, so I've got a pin holding it in place now, and then we're just going to thread our needle on. And then we're going to do that seamless join technique. I think I mentioned it earlier, but what we're going to do is we're going to go through every single stitch on the nose. And the way we do that is we first go in to one stitch, and when we come back up, we're going to come up through the next one. All right, so when we come up, I'm going to come up through the next stitch on the nose. And when we go down, we're going to actually go back down in the same space. So we came up through the stitch, but we're just going to go down where we came up from. So again, the next stitch over, we want to come up right where that next stitch is. Here's the next stitch, here's my needle. Pull that tight, come up through the V of that stitch. And go down right where we came up from, but not into that stitch again. Next stitch is right here, so I'm going to come up, lined up where that next stitch is, come up through that stitch, and back down where we came up through the face piece. So keep doing that all the way down, all the way around, but don't close the nose up completely because we're going to put some polyfill inside of there. Okay, so go until about up to here, I'd say, so that from here to here is open, and then we can fill it with polyfill. So I'm going to keep going and then come back to the video when I get right here. All right, so I stopped with that much of an opening left, and I'm going to fill it with polyfill. Don't put too much, just enough to keep it from collapsing. And then continue to sew it closed. And this is what it looks like all sewn on. Next, we will be embroidering the face on, and for that, you're going to want to cut a very long piece of black yarn. We're going to do the whole face in one go without cutting separate pieces. So the eyebrows, the eyes, the mouth, all of that in one piece of yarn. And I'll put a link in the description on my video that goes into really slower detail on how to sew onto something like this that's already closed up. All right, first we're going to start with the eyebrows. The eyebrows start on the edge of the face up here, and that's where we did that row in the back loop only. So you can sort of see the line of where the face starts. This is the top of the head and then the front of the face. There should be 3 stitches between the eyebrows. Let me show you the finished one. Okay, so here's the 2 eyebrows, and I can count 1, 2, 3 stitches in between them. So we're going to find the middle of the face lined up with the nose and go over 1, and that'll be where we'll do the first eyebrow. So starting with the left eyebrow, okay, so here's the middle of the face, which is this stitch right here, and I'm going to go 1 over. So I know I need my eyebrow to begin in here. Okay, so we're going to come from somewhere, anywhere that's away from that. So right here is fine, and you're going to come up in that spot that we marked off. And again, we have a very long piece so that we don't have to keep cutting separate pieces for the face. So pull that through, but not all the way. You want to have a tail at the end. So you can leave about that much sticking out the side of the head there. And we'll use that to tie a knot later. Okay, next we're going to go back down 1 stitch over to the left. So here's where we came up, right here. Go 1 stitch to the left, and that's where we're going back in to the face. All right, so straight from this point, we don't want to just go in without any direction. We want to go so that we can continue to make the eyebrow. So what we're going to do before we bring this back up and out, we're going to count 2 rows down. So we're going to count 1, 2 rows down from where we are. Okay, and then we want to see where we're lined up with the nose. So picture a line here like this. Okay, and then 1, 2, if we line that up right about here. Okay, so lined up with the side of the nose, 2 rows down from where we are, that intersects right there. So we want to come up right at that point. Okay, so it should look like that right now. Next, we're going to go back in where we ended up top here. Okay, so we came up here, go back in here. All right, and then as for where we're going to come up, picture the whole curve of the eyebrow here, and right in the middle, which would be here, is where we're going to come up with the needle. So right about there. Okay, so pull that almost all the way through. Okay, so you see what we did here. Here's what I'm pulling tight. Here's where I came through. And what this does is it's going to keep this from, you know, being able to move down. It's going to stay locked in to where this is. So where you came up should be in front of that part that we pulled down. And then we're going to go back in the same hole that we just came up from, but making sure we're on the other side of this loop. So sort of push that over and go right back in there where we were. And then, like I said, we have this all very long piece so that we can just go right on to the next eyebrow. So we need those 3 stitches in between. So I know the right eyebrow is going to start right there. So I want to come up right where that one's going to start. Right there. So 1, 2, 3 stitches, and coming up there for my next eyebrow. Okay, so now that eyebrow is locked in place, and we can do the next side. So we're going to repeat those steps again, but this time for the right one. So again, go in 1 stitch over, and then 2 rows down and lined up with the nose. So 1, 2 rows down, and the nose is about lined up here. So I'm going to come up right about there. Go back in where we ended at the top here, and come back up where halfway around the curve would be, so about there. And we're using this to hold that eyebrow in place, so we're going to go right back in, but on the other side of that, right in the same hole. And that, once I go back in, that'll complete the second eyebrow. So what I want to do then is jump to one of the eyes. Okay, we're going to start with this eye, since we're already on this eyebrow, and the eye starts 2 rows down from where the eyebrow began. So 1, 2, we're going to come up right there. So here we are about to finish this eyebrow, and we're going to look 2 rows down, lined up with the eyebrow. So right about there. Okay, the height of each eye should be about 2 rows. So about 1 row and about 2 rows here. So it's pretty close to the nose. You can see on the finished one. So it's about 2 rows tall, and the width is about to the outer edge of the nose, like a little bit more in, because this eyebrow edge is following the width of the nose, and then we're just like a little bit more inside, and that's where the eyes will be for the width. So let me show you how we're going to sort of mark our 3 main points for the eye, and then we're just going to keep on stitching to fill it in. Okay, so let's get our height. So again, go down about 2 rows. So I'm going to go right in here, and then I'm going to come up sort of like a triangle shape, and right here. All right, let's go back in to here, and then I'm going to come back up in the same spot we started for the eye. Actually, you know what, to make it easier angle for our needle, because I use a bent one, it does help make it easier to get in there. So I'm going to actually go this way, and then that'll make our line here, and I'm going to come up here at the bottom. All right, and then in this one again, and I'll come back up at the top. So now we have our eye shape drawn out, and just keep on repeatedly going back into here, even if you need to do like halfway into here, just to fill in this space. All right, so there's really not no specific amount of times you need to go over each spot, because it depends on how thick your yarn is. So I'm going to speed this part up, but you can see how I just sort of fill in the eye width, fill in the eye space by repeatedly stitching through this section that we marked off. Okay, when you're about to do the very last stitch, I just need to cover that little spot there. I'm gonna hop over to where the other eye is gonna start, And just like this one, we went 2 stitches down from the edge of the eyebrow, so that's going to be 1, 2 stitches down here. So I'm going to come up right there, and there should be about 3 stitches between the eyes. Okay, I wanted this to cover that last little spot there. Alright, so my first eye is done. Alright, and then we're going to go down 2 stitches straight down. Now sometimes, you know, you won't be able to go into like a nice obvious like opening like this, because to make this straight, we'll go a little bit sort of in between that stitch there. And we're going to come up about a stitch away from where the other eyebrow ends. And let's see if we like that shape. A lot of embroidery is trial and error sometimes, where you got to get it just right for it to look even and straight. It's not always perfect right away. All right, so let's draw that shape like we did on the first one. So I'm going to go into there again, come back up where we started, right there. And back into there. And just like the first eye, we're just going to keep building layer after layer until the eye is filled in and looks even and thick enough with the other eye. All right, so repeat that process again for the left eye. All right, I'm about to do my last stitch into the eye here. So that means I'm gonna continue down to where the mouth is gonna start. Now for the mouth, it's the beginning stitch. Let me show you on this one. We're gonna start here for the mouth and go that way. So we're up here right now with our stitch, and we're gonna bring our needle all the way through the head, and we wanna go where it's lined up with the nose this way and this way. So again, I'm over here. Now my needle is not very long, so I'm gonna make like kind of like a halfway point to get myself down there. So first I'm gonna just pull up here. Feel free to switch to like a very long needle for that part if you want. And the trick here is we obviously don't want to see this black yarn, so we have to go right back into the same hole that we just came up. All right, so again, I'm gonna line up this way and this way. So that brings me right about here. So that's where I'm gonna bring my needle up. And that looks about right. This way, this way. All right, and now that disappeared there. Okay, the next step, we're gonna come back in the same spot on the opposite side. So again, lining up with left side of the nose and the bottom of the nose. So that brings us to right about here. All right, and then we're gonna go from where we are now 2 rows down. Okay, so here's 1 row and 2 rows, and then the middle of the nose. So right about here, we're gonna come up there. All right, and the purpose of this stitch here is just like we did up here with the eyebrows. It's to keep the mouth down like that. So we don't want this to be super tight. So keep it loose enough that it makes a curved shape. And then just like we did up with the eyebrow, we're gonna go right back in the same spot, but we're kind of hopping over the thread of the mouth. Okay, and from here, we're gonna come up about one row from where the left side starts. So right about there. Okay, and then we're gonna go 3 rows down. So 1, 2, 3, and maybe like a hair in. So right about here. And then we're gonna pop back up right where the middle curve of this little smile line would be. So right about there. And we're gonna stitch that down by going right back into it on the other side of that. And then we're actually done with the smile once we pull this part tight. So we're gonna travel all the way back to where this tail ends started way at the beginning. And I think I can reach it. If not, yeah, let's just do like I did before, and we'll travel halfway there. Go right back in so that this disappears. And this, we're gonna come up, it has to be the same exact hole that this is in. So we're gonna come up through there. See that? Now we have a lot of extra length here. We're gonna cut so that both tail ends are the same length. So now we have these two tails coming out of the same opening. We're gonna tie a knot here about 2 or 3 times. Okay, so now we have this big old knot showing. We're gonna thread our needle with both of these tail ends. And then we have to go back into the same exact hole. That's very important because then that knot is gonna disappear inside. You cannot even go 1 stitch over away from that. So right back in the same spot, and just come up somewhere far away. It doesn't matter where. Just give it some distance and pull that till that knot pops in like that. And then obviously you can pop that back up. We just pulled pretty hard there. So the knot is completely gone. And then just keep weaving in this end until it's, you know, a nice short piece, and then you can just trim the excess. And the face is done. Then you're gonna grab your blanket, okay, flip it over. We have that long tail that we left in the middle from the beginning. You're gonna thread your needle. And this is the back of the blanket, so we want to weave that in, just bring it somewhere close by, go through to the front. Okay, so now we have it the right way. Here's the arms, and we want to connect the head to the middle, so we're going to go right dead center on the back and just keep sewing through the head back into the center part of the blanket until it feels nice and secure. All right, I went through the head. Now I'm going back through the blanket, pulling that tight each time, making sure I'm straight with the arms. All right, now I want to come back up through the blanket. Try not to go through the really big holes like that. Try to go through parts where you're kind of like splitting through the yarn, and then go back into the head. And we're just going to keep doing that a bunch of times until it feels very tight and secure to the body. All right, I went through the head and the blanket a bunch of times, and it feels very secure now. So I'm just going to make sure at the end, I'm going to go through to the back side, and that's where I want to tie my knots. So I'm going to flip it over and just do a bunch of knots and weaving through the blanket. Since we're using the yellow here, we want to stay within the blanket now. Alright, then cut the excess off, and you are done. And there's your blankie. I hope you enjoyed the pattern, and I'd love to see your creations with my pattern. So if you do share your stuff on social media, please tag me, and I always share it on my page when you guys tag me. And just don't forget to not leave your blankie behind if you end up moving, okay? Because then he'll be super sad. Thanks for watching, and subscribe and like this video if you liked it. Bye!